All right, we are back with another reaction. So today we're gonna look at the Admiral Agenda's true strength. This is very interesting because spoiler warning for anime watchers of One Piece. I'll give you guys 3 seconds. Three, two, one. All right, spoilers. In recent chapters, Rox Dizabek, who is like one of the strongest characters in One Piece from what we've seen thus far. He completely, at least from what we were told, killed an admiral. Right. He killed an admiral. Now, granted, we don't know who this admiral is. A lot of people are theorizing that it might have been maybe Akainu's relative. That might explain why Akainu is so angry and despise pirates. So that could make sense. But we don't know. We don't know who this admiral is that Zebek killed. So because of that, a lot of people have been downplaying the admirals. They've been saying a lot of things like, "Oh, they're trash. They're nowhere near as strong as the emperors." Which, for the record, I do think the emperors are stronger than admirals, but I don't think it's a big gap. Now, I personally used to be a massive admiral defender, although I will admit, based on what we've seen so far with like Egghead and an Elbath now, like it's very clear that Oda's trying to let us know that the Admirals do not compete with the Emperors, or at least they can compete, but they cannot beat them. With the exception of perhaps Akainu, he's the only exception. And I mean, yeah, like there's been a lot of disrespect going around with the Admirals, which is understandable. I feel like Oda has been putting them in a really bad spot recently. So I'm very curious to hear what this guy has to say about the Admiral agenda, and he might even talk about the strength. And I'll let you guys know whether I agree or disagree. So, as always, link will be down below in the description, so you guys could um, look at the original video. And let's just get started.
Admirals are some of the most downplayed and underrated characters in the entire One Piece community. A lot of that comes from misunderstandings about what the story actually says about their strength, and from agenda-driven takes that push overblown narratives either overrating or downplaying certain characters. So in this video, I want to go over the true Admiral agenda. I'll break down what the story actually says about them, why they would body any commander, and why they can compete with the Emperors. The Admirals are the Navy's greatest military.
So already, I agree with what he's saying here so far. I do think that the admirals dog walk the commanders. I mean, it's pretty obvious that they do. And I know people are gonna be like, "Oh, but Ben Beckman, he threatened Kizaru back in Marineford, and then Kizaru doing this. Oh, Toto Ben Beckman, right?" I, you guys do realize that in the next chapter or so, and then in the next episode, we literally saw Kizaru just completely ignore Ben Beckman. So like, it just goes to show that Kizaru's just a troll. He doesn't take things seriously. So I don't think we should use that to say, "Oh yeah, that means that the right hand men or the commanders are like they could compete with the apples." It's clear that they can't. Now, whether or not they can compete with emperors, it depends on like what he means by that. Like, can they give them a good fight? Can they scrap with them? Can they hold their own, but not necessarily win? Or they can win? Or is 50-50? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what he has to say.
Power. The main admirals typically used in discussion are Akainu, Aokiji, Kizaru, Fujitora, and Green Bull. Others like Sengoku, Kong, and Garp should also be included in the Admiral Agenda conversation as well, as all were either previous admirals or offered the position of admiral. Now I know just hearing Garp's name made some of you Yonko over admirals believers break out into cold sweat, but let's not forget, Garp was offered the title of admiral. The only reason he declined was because he didn't want to serve directly under the Celestial Dragons. If he had accepted, he would have been in that position. This means one important thing, that the admiral title is strength-based, not clout-based. It's not about political influence or reputation.
And this is true because in a recent, I think it was an SBS or a V recording. I forgot what source, but Oda revealed recently the bounties of the admirals, and I believe all the admirals, including Old Guard, has a bounty of like 3 billion, which equivalates with, or they had 3 crowns, I believe, which means 3 billion. So 1 crown equals 1 bill berries. So for those that are anime watchers, Oda here and there he tends to provide extra information outside the story, outside the manga, and outside the anime. So he gives us few extra information, and it's not Oda directly. Sometimes it's his editors or somebody else that works with Oda. They provide us with like little bits and pieces of like certain things. And in one of the SBS or whatever it was, the Aviva card or whatever, we got confirmation that Fleet Admiral Sakazuki, aka Akainu, he has 5 crowns, which means he is a 5 billion berry man, which obviously would mean that currently in the store he has the highest bounty right now. You know, not counting Roger, not counting Whitebeard, all those legends, and obviously not counting Dragon because we don't know how much he's worth in the story. But yeah, like it just goes to show you that Fleet Admirals, they are somewhat comparable to Yonkos. Just something to keep in mind.
It's about how powerful you are. That's why Fujitora and Green Bull were promoted despite only being in the Navy for 2 years. It was because they were strong enough to earn it. And since Garp was offered to be one, it says a lot about the strength of those who hold the title. Now, am I saying that every Admiral is equal to Prime Garp? No, of course not. But there's no way Garp could casually pound them into the ground like he did Marco or Shiryu. In One Piece, characters in the same category usually operate in the same relative strength bracket unless they're explicitly called out as an exception. All the Emperors are in the same strength class except Buggy, who is a stated exception. All the Warlords were in comparable brackets except Mihawk, who is stated to be above them. The Admirals are the Navy's pinnacle of combat, and thusly should be operating in the same bracket as Garp and Sengoku, both who are pinnacles of the Navy's power. This doesn't mean they're equal, but it does mean they can compete, and that's a narrative fact, not my opinion. So if the Admirals are so powerful, what do they have that makes them this deadly? The strength of the Admirals is different from the strength of the Emperors in one key way. The Emperors are usually characters that were born physically monstrous and essentially just brute force their way to the top. Admirals, however, are expected to have mastered over the highest levels of Haki, both advanced armament and more than likely advanced observation, as they're the product of military grade training, which would push them to peak performance in every combat category the Marines specialize in. Vice Admirals are
Yeah, it's very interesting how you pointed that out because yeah, so far all the emperors that we've seen, they seem to be like prodigies. I know people don't like that word, but it's the truth. They seem to be like prodigies. They were born to be great. For example, Big Mom, since birth, she was like tremendously powerful, destroying villages at a very young age. Had a really high bounty when she was a kid as well. Monstrous strength, defeating giants as a freaking toddler, as a kid. Just to show how crazy she is. Kaido, when he was a kid, already stated to be the strongest. He was gonna be sold, or yeah, he was gonna be sold to the world government because of his strength. And people in the kingdom of in the Vaka kingdom, I think that's where he was born, the Vaka kingdom. They were gonna sell Kaido because of his strength and how powerful he was, and they were afraid of that. So it just goes to show you that these emperors are so strong, and even Shanks. I mean, he's part of the Figardland family, and granted, we don't know much about them, but I assume it's a family of straight, straight like strong people, just like Luffy's family, the D clan. They're so strong. I assume the same thing would apply to the Figardland family. They're so strong. So all these emperors, they have special lineage amongst them, or as people call it, nepo babies. And just recently, like I mentioned, Zebek is known as Blackbeard's father. So it just goes to show you that these guys are so gifted. Meanwhile, the Admirals, from what we've seen thus far, they have to work really hard to get to where they're to get to where they are. They had to constantly train. They had to constantly train their hockey. They had to train their devil fruits. We saw Garp and Kuzan. They were punching the airships. They were punching these big ships with their bare fists and no hockey. So it just goes to show you that they have to train super hard. Kobe is a great example. He has to train 1,000 times harder than almost anybody in the series to be really strong.
He learned Haki and Rokushiki as a standard requirement, shown by the fact that they all possess it, and
Rokushiki,
Kobe and
yeah.
Helmeppo learned Rokushiki from Garp pre-time skip and Haki post-time skip. Admirals, being the absolute elite of the Navy's forces, should naturally possess peak Rokushiki and peak Haki as well. Add on tactical training, advanced battlefield strategy, and real-world combat experience, and you have fighters who are dangerous on every level. Hand-to-hand combat, ranged combat, environmental warfare, and so on. Not only that, but their devil fruits are some of the most broken in the series for those who possess it. Aokiji possessing total environmental control via ice, Kizaru having the speed and destructive power of light, Akainu who is stated to have the greatest offensive power through magma, Fujitora possessing gravity manipulation on an island-wide scale, Green Bull having plant powers capable of draining opponents' life force as well as being able to respawn his own body, and Sengoku with the durability of a Buddha and the ability to create destructive shockwaves. These are handpicked abilities either chosen by the world government to perfectly fit each admiral's personality and fighting style, or fruits they've trained and utilized for many years before even getting to the position, giving them not only maximum efficiency, but also an easier path toward full mastery, and yes, more than likely even awakenings. Combine advanced Haki, elite Rokushiki, world-class strategy, and busted devil fruits, and you get some of the deadliest combatants in the entire One Piece world. However, it's one thing to say how strong we think they should be, but it's a different thing to say how strong Oda thinks they should be. There's been a growing issue in the fandom lately, which is people misunderstanding or ignoring the narrative because of agenda piece. Instead of analyzing what's shown and said in context, discussions devolve into my favorite character can one-shot your favorite character type hype battles. Take Kaido for example. The fandom turned him into some unstoppable god who one-shots everyone except
Kaido is a great example because I've been seeing a lot of Kaido disrespect, and it's actually ridiculous. Me personally, I do think he's still stronger than like people like Shanks. I know, okay, maybe not Shanks because man, I know I'm talking a lot of spoilers, but all right, I'm gonna keep that to myself. But point is, Kaido's really strong, and the disrespect is kind of ridiculous. It really doesn't make sense because look, Luffy's my favorite character. You guys know he's in my banner in my YouTube channel, right? But guys, let's be honest. If Luffy didn't get help, he would have lost. He would have. That's just the truth. And again, this is coming from a big Luffy glazer. Trust. All right. But yeah, the kind of disrespect gotta stop. It's ridiculous. He should be in everybody's top three, top five. Like he should not be any lower than that. He's really strong.
Shanks, but the story itself never actually says that. The narrative implies characters like Big Mom could fight him evenly to a stalemate most of the time, and that anyone above Odin's bracket should be able to give him a run for his money. For the Admirals, the narrative repeatedly places them on at least Egghead Luffy level.
Okay, so the whole Big Mom stuff, that's also interesting because from what we've seen, the audience, I think we can all agree Big Mom is pretty underwhelming. And I feel like Oda has done a horrible job displaying Big Mom's strength. Now, granted, she's not in her prime. I'm well aware that she's a lot older than Kaido. So that way you could explain that, oh yeah, Kaido's a lot stronger than Big Mom. At least during the current time when we fought them in Wano. But like back then, like if they were in the same age, they would probably be on the same level. But like I feel like Oda has done a horrible job displaying Big Mom's strength. Like even though she's not in her prime, I feel like he made her do a lot of things that were very questionable. Like her fight with Kid and Law, why she didn't use advanced conquerors, I would never understand. I legit don't understand why she didn't just spam advanced conquerors. We know that Law cannot use his devil fruit unless people got stronger hockey than him. And we know for a fact Big Mom has stronger hockey than both Kid and Law. So why wasn't she spamming advanced conquerors hockey? I just don't understand. So I don't blame people for downplaying Big Mom because I personally think Oda didn't do a good job portraying her strength in Wano in particular.
at minimum. There is no depiction of an admiral getting completely steamrolled by a Yonko level character while they're on guard and serious in a fight. Luffy versus Kizaru and Egghead, for example. People often cite this as evidence of Yonko dominance, but here's what actually happened. Luffy used Gear 5, Advanced Conqueror's Haki, and Advanced Armament Haki, essentially going all out with what techniques he has. Kizaru, on the other hand, he didn't even use Haki, relying on just his base moveset, the same 3 attacks he used pre-time skip, plus 1 new light clone trick. Despite Luffy hitting him with an attack stronger than the one that first floored Kaido, Kizaru was up first and stayed conscious after the attack.
Okay, I want to say Kizaru didn't use Haki because it's pretty evident he did, considering there were times where he was avoiding attacks, right? Similar to what Katakuri typically does with his devil fruit, where he's able to like shape his mochi fruit with the use of future sight. What I assume is that he probably used future sight, Kizaru. I think he used future sight to avoid some of Luffy's attacks. So I'm not gonna say that he didn't use Haki, but I will say that I don't think he was trying. And it was evident that he wasn't trying. And I'm assuming he's gonna talk about it.
While Luffy was passed out from Gear 5th. If this was a battle with no one else around, Kizaru would have killed Luffy in this fight. Akainu vs Whitebeard in Marineford. Akainu literally punches a hole in his chest and takes half his face off and stops his two-handed swing with his foot, while the only hits Whitebeard landed on him the whole fight were when his back was turned and he was off guard. Neither of these read like a Yonko vs Admiral mismatch, instead reading like a battle that is much more evenly matched and would go further if one party didn't have other things they were focusing on. The community, however, will treat these as though they're proof of Admiral fraudulence because they can only ever see what's happening on the screen instead of using context clues. This tendency leading to the common thought that the Admirals are portrayed relative to the commanders because of the Marineford scaling, despite the fact that the Admirals are portrayed as vastly superior to Yonko commanders on multiple occasions, like Aokiji humiliating Cracker with no effort, Kizaru blitzing a much stronger Snake Man Luffy than the one Katakuri was overwhelmed by, Green Bull dominating King and Queen in Wano, regardless of if they were damaged or not. Their ancient Zoans and all the Straw Hats who don't have durability and health boosting abilities felt confident in stepping in to fight Green Bull if it came down to it, meaning that King and Queen were also in fighting condition, as well as all the Admirals who were holding.
Okay, I want to say fighting condition, but I agree they're not as injured as people made it seem. And I think he made a point about the Admirals holding back in Marineford, or them getting caught off guard. So yeah, not only that's true, but also keep in mind that it was already established that the Admirals were not allowed to go all out by Sengoku because he mentioned that they cannot afford to destroy Marineford because there's still people living there, right? So no matter what, the Admirals were not going all out during Marineford. So even if you make the case that the commanders were keeping up with the Admirals in Marineford, you could just say that, well, they weren't trying because they're not allowed to. They're not allowed to go all out because they would destroy Marineford. And obviously that's not their goal. They don't want to destroy Marineford.
Back during Marineford because of how close they were to their own forces. Akainu being the only one that wasn't actively holding back the whole time, and he was the one that literally 17v1'd the entirety of the Whitebeard commanders and essentially embarrassed the Emperor Whitebeard on numerous occasions.
Again, I want to say he went all out because again, I do think they were all holding back considering what Sengoku mentioned to them, that they're not allowed to because they're not trying they're not allowed to destroy Marineford.
Occasions. The Admirals are shown to be above anyone who isn't an Emperor and are shown as relative to those portrayed close to the Emperors like current Luffy or Old Garp, both who would steamroll any Yonko commander. Another common debate is whether the newer Admirals Green Bull and Fujitora are weaker than the original trio Aokiji, Kizaru, and Akainu. The community will tell you they are because if they can't downplay the OG3 who are getting these crazy feats, they can at least downplay the new two, but regardless of what you think, the story literally says Akainu's navy is stronger than Sengoku's. How can the navy be stronger if its greatest weapons, the Admirals, are weaker? The logic doesn't add up. Green Bull and Fujitora were chosen because they're at least on the same level as their predecessors, so logically, Similarly, they should also perform similar to however we see Kizaru or Aokiji perform in the story. Speaking on that, however, I know somebody just said, well, that means all the admirals are still getting bodied based off how Shanks did Green Bull. Green Bull gets a lot of flack for being stopped by Shanks' Conqueror's Haki, but let's think about this for a second. Shanks is widely believed to be a top 1 contender in the entire series by literally almost the whole
Exactly.
community. Everyone calls him the Roger of this generation, and he casually stopped Kaido from reaching Marine.
Exactly. I was gonna say that's not really a bad thing because Shanks is depicted as one of the strongest, if not the strongest character in their series currently. And again, spoilers for anime watchers. Shanks's hockey got compared to Joy Boy. Joy Boy, somebody that's depicted as the god of the verse, right? The original pirate, the very first pirate that ever existed in the world. He got compared to him in terms of Conqueror's hockey by the Giants. Now, whether or not it's accurate, it doesn't matter. You know why? Oda made that comparison, implying that Shanks is on that level. That's how crazy Shanks is right now. So Green Bull looking bad against Shanks is not really a bad thing. And on top of that, Green Bull even said that he doesn't want to fight him and his crew. So it's not only that Green Bull has to worry about Shanks, he has to worry about him on top of his crew who are stated to be well balanced in terms of strength. They're all really strong. So I don't think it's a bad look for Green Bull. I really don't think so. Now, yes, for the sake of a agenda piece, it is funny. I won't lie, but people that take it to heart, to take that takes it very serious, I do think they need to chill it. They need to calm down because it's not that bad. It really isn't. If it was a bum, if Shanks was a bum, then yeah, people have every right to clown Green Bull. But let's be honest, Shanks is not a bum. He's again probably top 1 currently in the story, with the exception of Emu. But yeah,
Marineford and then got placed in Kaido's top 5 off of that encounter. If Shanks catches
right,
you off guard with a full blast of his Conqueror's Haki, guess what? You're supposed to feel something. That's not an Admiral
yeah,
anti-feat, that's just Shanks being Shanks. Shanks doing this was literally
exactly,
considered Shanks upscale by the entirety of the community who was starved for feats from him. If Zoro cuts Luffy while he's off guard, would we call Luffy weak? No, we wouldn't because we
right,
understand context matters. Most Admiral anti-feats boil down to either being in situations where they're nerfed because of their environment or facing characters that would embarrass anyone else in the story in the exact same situation. Oda deliberately nerfs the Admirals to avoid showcasing their true strength too early, similar to how Mihawk
right.
constantly holds back with weak in-universe explanation. There is no character in the story who would casually one-shot any current Admiral if they weren't caught off guard. Could they lose the fight? Absolutely, I'm not saying the Admirals are unstoppable, but a one-sided stomp? Nothing in this narrative supports any character being able to do that. Another thing some of you will bring up to downplay the Admirals is the Admiral that Rocks killed. Just a quick reminder though,
Yeah,
Rocks
see,
Beck beat both Whitebeard and Shiki, required Garp and Roger working together to be defeated, and he's damn near the strongest character of all time. So if Rocks killed an Admiral, so what? Rocks would have also killed Kaido, Big Mom, or Old Whitebeard under similar circumstances.
exactly. It's the same thing with Shanks. Like that's not really a bad thing. It's arguably a top 1 character in the verse. Like the thing is, people don't seem to understand that there's just too many top tiers in the One Piece verse. So when they hear things like, "Oh, Rocks killed the Admiral," automatically people are like, "Oh my god, Admirals are trash." That doesn't mean the Admirals are trash. That just means that Rocks is that dude. Like that's that's like not a bad thing. For crying out loud, he's like probably the only character that destroyed the the giant gates that the Marines have. Nobody has ever done that from what we know. Like that's crazy. That just shows you how much of his attack power, how much attack power he has with his attacks. Like almost anybody would die from him if he was going all out.
This is like the people who call Jogo weak because he got bodied by Sukuna and
Right.
Gojo. These are the strongest characters in the series, and it's an anti-feat that the Admirals lost or looked bad. If anything, it's the
Exactly. That's a good comparison. Jogo, he gets clowned constantly by the community, but again, all he's done is fought top tiers. You then saw him destroy people like um He destroyed a lot of people that are like that are very strong, and he did it with ease. And again, the only people that he's not able to beat are people like Gojo and Sukuna. That's not a bad thing. It just goes to show you how strong those two are in particular.
Feat that rocks killed the Admiral, which is one of the things I always want to bring up. Everyone will call the Admirals weak, but the moment they want to say a character is strong, you know who the first person they're bringing up is? An Admiral. Nobody's saying, oh yeah, he definitely top 10, I think he could be Marco, or nah bro, he ain't losing, he could probably take out Katakuri. When you hear the term Admiral, you automatically think they're a valid fighter, which is why the strongest characters in the series get their feats equally off of both Admirals and Emperors. Shanks gets his feats off Kaido and Green Bull, Rox gets his feats off Whitebeard, Shiki, and whoever it was he killed. Now with all that being said, let me summarize before we get into the main meat. The Admirals are some of the strongest fighters in the world, possessing world-class combat abilities, devil fruits, haki, and techniques. Their strength should be in a similar bracket to characters like Garp and Egghead Luffy, and the vast majority of their anti-feats are either taken out of context just against characters that would embarrass absolutely everybody else in the story. They are far above the level of every commander and are closer to the Emperors in terms of strength. Now the biggest debate concerning the Admiral agenda is how they stack up to the Emperors, so let me make it clear. The only Emperor likely to body an Admiral is Shanks, and even then he couldn't one-shot any of them on guard in a fight, not even Green Bull. Kaido, Big Mom, Blackbeard, or Old Whitebeard aren't casually one-shotting Admirals unless they land perfect full-power cheap shots on an off-guard or casual Admiral. The reverse is also true. If Kizaru or Akainu caught an Emperor completely off guard and went all out, they would one-shot them too. High-level fights in One Piece are determined by slim openings, endurance, and luck, which is why so many of the fights last for days and days. Characters in the top bracket of fighters are all so close together that the difference between them is negligible and boils down to who is simply a better fighter. But with that debate out of the way, the final section of the Admiral agenda I have yet to go deep on is Akainu. Akainu, despite being an Admiral, is in his own league as far as the agenda is concerned. He's the one Admiral that everyone should be able to agree is above the vast majority of the Emperors. He has the highest destructive ability in the series, being able to physically mow down everyone's durability with his Devil Fruit and his advanced armament haki. He has insane stamina and durability, taking full power.
And what sucks is that Akainu mainly gets disrespected, mainly because of Marineford, and it's clear that those people never read the manga, because if you read the manga, Akainu destroyed Whitebeard. He did. You compare that and you compare it to the anime, they made Whitebeard look way better in the anime than in the manga. Like, it's actually ridiculous how vastly different that fight was between the anime and manga. Like, it's clear that Oda respects Akainu. It's very clear. I don't know why the anime did those changes. I guess. Look, I really don't know, but yeah, like, I think people pay attention too much to the anime instead of looking at the source material, which is where power scaling really should come from. Is the source material, not the anime. Another thing is Akainu. No, wait. Another thing was the fact that Whitebeard. People will make the case that Whitebeard was ill, right? Okay, that's true, but again, Akainu wasn't trying, or at least it was implied that he couldn't go all out because of Marineford. So that doesn't, and it's clear that, at least based on the manga, it's very clear that if they both were, let's just say, for example, they were fighting somewhere else, similar to Akainu and Kuza. Akainu is gonna win that fight because Whitebeard, old sick Whitebeard, cannot use haki on a consistent base. He's unable to use his Devil Fruit that much. His stamina is a lot weaker. Like, everything is going against him. Akainu should win. He's in his prime.
Off-guard shots from Whitebeard and getting back up, as well as fighting Aokiji for 10 days, somebody who was going toe-to-toe with Garp. He has strong hints of Conqueror's haki and is being portrayed as one of the few people in Roger and Whitebeard's bracket in the current generation, with his bounty reflecting that at 5 billion. I don't care if you think he only has it because he's a fleet admiral, because at that point just say that the only reason Roger and Whitebeard's bounties are over 5 billion is because they have large fleets and a strong crew. Bounties now being given to the Marines is literally Oda showing you how they stack up in strength similar to the pirates, because there's no world government threat level inflation gimmick to say that these aren't just how strong Oda thinks they should be. It's literally the reason Garp's bounty is 3 billion, despite him not being an admiral, because Oda is saying he's in their strength bracket. Akainu being one of the main endgame fights for Luffy places him in a category above anyone he'd fight previously. Sakazuki downplay is one of the most heinous acts people commit against the Admiral agenda because of the One Piece's anime showing of him during Marineford.
What
There are
did I
actually
say?
people
See?
that think Garp or Whitebeard would have bullied him in that arc because of his portrayal, and not only that, but because they just hate the fact that Akainu killed Ace. Akainu is one
Exactly. That's what I was trying to say. As you guys saw, I was a bit. I was in a loss of thought there. But yeah, I was gonna say the reason why people also downplay Akainu is because he killed Ace, which is the dumbest, most is the dumbest thing ever. I probably shouldn't say that word, but yeah, I'm gonna keep it to myself. But yeah, it's the dumbest thing ever. Why would you hate a character because they killed another character? That's not a good reasoning to downplay their strength. That makes no sense.
of the main victims of ignoring the story because you don't like the character. Because people will genuinely
Exactly.
say Akainu will end up being a Sabo or Kobe fight because they don't want to acknowledge that he could be a challenge for Luffy since they hate him so much. Akainu is easily top 5 in the verse right now, possibly top 3, and you would give Prime Garp, Roger, and Whitebeard very hard fought battles if they ever got the chance to fight. Sakazuki's strength being showcased is going to be one of the biggest turning points in the community because so many people have become disillusioned to his strength, and I for one hope the community keeps downplaying him so I can be on the right side of history once he starts moving crazy. This video is my case for the Admirals to show why they're not weak. They're not commander level, they're not easily steamrolled by emperors, they are among the absolute top tier combatants in One Piece, with Akainu arguably standing above almost everyone not named Emu or Shanks. The Admiral agenda is one of the things I back because unlike most people who read the story, I can see the trajectory of the Admirals beyond what's going on right now, and future-proofed agendas always hit harder than recency biased ones. But what are your thoughts? I know we're probably going to be debating and arguing in this comment section for days, so let me know what you think. How strong are the Admirals in your opinion? How strong is Akainu compared to the Emperors? And how many Admirals would it actually take to defeat a Yonko? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you stuck around to the end.
All right, we'll end it right there. So I guess to answer his questions, I do think that maybe with the exception of Green Bull and Fujitora, I do think that the Yonkos, in order for the Yonkos to be defeated, you need one admiral or okay, this is the way I view it. I think all the emperors, Shanks, Blackbeard, not Buggy, obviously, Kaido, Big Mom, if they were alive, I think they could all beat the admirals with the exception of Akainu. That's the way I view it. And then with Shanks, though, I do think Shanks beats Akainu, but it's gonna be a hard fight. And I think Akainu would give Shanks a good fight. But overall, I do think Shanks beats Akainu. That's the way I view it. But you guys let me know what you think about it. Um, once again, take a look at the original video, and see you guys next time. Take care.